I never saw it coming, not really. Marriage was supposed to be the big step, right? I thought I knew everything about her. Sarah, God, I still can't believe I ever trusted her that much. We met during college, both of us ambitious, trying to build a future. She always said she wanted honesty, loyalty, things I thought we had. I remember our wedding day clear as daylight, her in that white dress, nervous but glowing, promising forever. I was on cloud nine. But then the cracks started to show. Little things at first, missing phone calls, late nights she'd brush off with a quick excuse, small lies that I overlooked because I didn't want to see the truth. I told myself it was work, stress, anything but what it really was. Still, I felt uneasy. Something was off, but I shoved it down. I was about to marry her after all. I wanted to believe in us. It was during our honeymoon, the first few days at least, that my suspicions turned into something tangible. We checked into that resort, the kind with a pool and a view of endless ocean. We were lying in bed that night, the kind where you're supposed to. Blissful, but I felt like I was holding onto a thin thread. I had my phone in my hand, scrolling through some news. That's when I saw it. A message from someone named Jake sent just hours before. It was a photo, her with her head tilted back, laughing, her hand resting on his shoulder. I froze, my stomach sank. My palms went clammy. I stared at the screen, reading her words beneath the photo. Can't wait for tonight, it's going to be perfect. Who the hell was Jake? What the hell was going on? I felt a hot rush of anger. I scrolled through more messages, flirtatious, intimate, basically a full-blown affair right there on her phone. How the hell did I not see this before? I stayed up that night, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd just found. My mind kept circling back to the lies she told, the way she'd looked me in the eye and lied about her late nights, her work meetings. All of it was bullshit. She'd been cheating on me with her coworker, Jake, right before we even got married. This wasn't just some fling, it was a full-fledged betrayal. The worst part, she lied about everything, about him, about her feelings about us. I remember feeling a strange mix of numbness and rage. I wanted to scream, to shake her awake and make her see what she'd done. But instead I just sat there, clutching her phone, feeling the world tilt beneath me. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly? It was like discovering she'd been living a different life. I kept flipping through her messages, each one stabbing me deeper. Next morning, I knew I had to face her. I didn't wake her up that day. I just took her phone and kept it in my pocket like a weapon. I had to think, what was I going to do? This wasn't just about cheating. It was about betrayal on a scale I'd never imagined. I'd trusted her blindly, and she'd thrown that trust away. This was the kind of hurt I couldn't just brush off. That night, I sat in the hotel room, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. I kept replaying what I'd seen, trying to find a way to confront her without losing my mind. I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let this slide. I had to decide, do I confront her now or wait? The anger was bubbling inside and I was ready to strike. I just needed the right moment. But as I stared at her sleeping figure, I realized something. If I was going to do this, I had to be smart. I needed evidence, a plan, because I wasn't just going to storm in and make a scene. No, I wanted her to feel what I felt: betrayed, humiliated, broken. And I wasn't going to stop until I got the revenge I deserved. The next step was clear. I was going to find out everything about Jake, who he was, where he worked, and I was going to make her regret ever crossing me. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew this was just the beginning. The worst part was I didn't feel sad about it. No, I was too angry. There are some things you don't forgive, and cheating like that, that's one of them. I closed her phone carefully, feeling its cold screen against my palm. I thought about what I'd say when I confronted her, how I'd make her understand she'd messed with the wrong man. But first I had to get all the pieces in place. That's when I realized I'd be the one to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. The morning after I found her secret messages, I knew I couldn't just pretend things were normal. I didn't want to wake her up and start shouting or crying. That wouldn't get me anywhere. Instead, I decided to stay calm, gather my thoughts, and plan my next move. I still had her phone tucked in my pocket, like a loaded gun ready to be used. While she was still asleep, I got out of bed quietly. I didn't want to wake her just yet. I needed to check her emails, her social media accounts, anything that might give me more insight into her affair. I knew she was sneaky, but I also knew she wasn't careful enough. She thought she'd kept her secret hidden, but I'd seen enough. I sat on the edge of the bed, my stomach twisting. My hands were sweaty and my head felt foggy from the adrenaline. I unlocked her phone and started digging. Her messenger apps were first. Sure enough, more flirtatious. Texts, plans for secret meetups, and promises not to tell anyone. I felt my jaw tighten. The betrayal wasn't just in those messages I'd seen last night, it was everywhere. I scrolled through her photos, her recent selfies, and there was Jake, smiling, leaning close, touching her arm in a way that made my stomach churn. I saw the way she looked at him. It wasn't just lust, it was love, at least it had been. That realization hit me hard, sharper than anything else. She'd been lying about everything, even about how she felt. I knew I had to confront her, but I also needed proof. I kept scrolling, copying screenshots, storing everything in a hidden folder on my phone. I wanted to be ready, just in case she caught me snooping. If I was going to expose her, I needed her to know I had seen everything. It had to hit her like a freight train. When she finally stirred, I pretended I was still asleep. She rolled over, pulling the blanket around her shoulders, probably trying to hide her face from the sunlight. I saw her take a deep breath, then she sat up slowly. I stayed still. Watching her, she looked different, more tense, more anxious. I could tell she'd sensed something was wrong. She reached for her phone and started scrolling, probably checking her messages. I clenched my fists. I had to act now, but I wanted to surprise her. I sat up slowly, tossing the blanket aside. "So," I said, voice steady but cold, "who's Jake?" Her eyes widened. She froze, her hand trembling over her phone. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play innocent," I said. My voice was firm. "I saw your messages, the photos, the plans. What the hell were you doing?" Her face turned pale. For a moment she looked like she was about to cry, but then she snapped back into her mask of calm. "It's nothing, just a stupid mistake. I was confused, okay?" "Confused?" I laughed bitterly. "You lied to me for months. Did you really think I wouldn't find out, that I wouldn't see your phone?" She looked down, avoiding my gaze. "It wasn't supposed to happen, I swear. It was a one-time thing. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I stepped closer, feeling the heat rise in my chest. "One time, really, that's what you call it. I saw enough to know it wasn't just a moment of weakness. You planned this, didn't you? You were sneaking around, lying every step of the way." She started crying then, but I didn't care. I felt a cold fury building inside me. All those nights I stayed awake, worrying, wondering if she was cheating. Turns out I was right. Every secret she kept, every lie she told, it was building to this moment. "I trusted you," I said, voice shaking. "Just threw it all away. All those promises, all that time we spent building something real. And for what? To cheat on me with a guy from work." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't do this. I was stupid. I made a mistake." "No," I said, voice firm. "You made a choice. And I'm done. I'm done with the lies. You want to keep lying, go ahead. But I'm not sticking around for this bullshit." I reached into my pocket, pulling out her phone, and handed it over to her. "You can keep your secrets. I want nothing to do with a liar like you. Pack your stuff. I want you out today." She looked at me stunned, then slowly nodded. "Fine, I'll leave." As she grabbed her things, I felt my stomach twist again, part relief, part rage. I'd seen enough. I knew what I had to do next. I was going to make her regret ever crossing me. But first I had to act. I had a plan brewing, one that would change everything. The worst part, I felt a strange sense of calm. Like I'd just taken control of the situation. She had betrayed me again and again, and now I was going to make sure she paid. Not with tears or words, but with something she wouldn't forget. And as she slammed the door behind her, I knew I was just getting started. After she left, I stayed in that empty apartment, the silence almost deafening. My ears were still ringing from our confrontation. My stomach felt like it was twisted in 1,000 knots, but there was a strange clarity, too. I'd finally faced her betrayal head-on. Now, I needed to get serious about my revenge. It was the only thing that could bring me closure, or so I told myself. I spent the next few hours doing what I do best, planning. I knew I couldn't just walk away and pretend this was over, not without making her feel the pain she'd caused. My mind kept circling around her and Jake, their secret rendezvous, how she'd been lying for months. It was a sickness, and I was about to make sure she knew exactly how sick she was. First, I decided I needed to find out everything about Jake. Who he was, where he worked, what his life looked like. If I was going to do this right, I needed leverage. I kept her phone hidden in my desk drawer where I could access it anytime, and I started digging. Social media profiles, LinkedIn, Facebook, anything that could give me a lead. I found him easily enough. Jake was a manager at a nearby tech firm, had a wife, kids, the whole suburban nightmare. Perfect. That made it easier to rattle him. I kept scrolling, looking for moments where I could strike. Photos of him smiling with colleagues, his family at the park. All normal. All innocent looking. But I knew better. I also noticed that Jake had a recent trip planned to a nearby city for a conference. Convenient. While I was at it, I pulled together everything I had from her messages, her photos, the email exchanges. I made copies, backing everything up on a flash drive I hid in my shoe. I wasn't going to leave her a chance to take these things back or deny. No, I wanted her to realize I was ready for war. The feeling of cold steel in my gut was familiar now. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was determined. I wanted her to feel the way she made me feel, betrayed, humiliated, broken. And I was going to make her see that I could destroy her world just as easily as she'd shattered mine. Later that night, I called a friend of mine who worked in private security. I needed a way to make sure Jake's phone, car, and hotel room were all accessible, just in case I needed to plant something or gather more information. He was reluctant but understood. Just be smart about it, he warned. Don't get caught. I knew what I was doing. I wasn't planning to kill anyone just to get what I needed, to make sure Jake knew I was watching him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I wanted to send a message. Betrayal doesn't go unpunished. I also started to draft a message, an anonymous note that I would send to Jake's wife, exposing everything. I wanted her to know what kind of man Jake really was, how he cheated on his wife, lied to her face, played the perfect family man while screwing around behind her back. That was next. First, I needed to get close enough to Jake himself. In the meantime, I kept my face cold and unreadable, pretending everything was normal. Going to work, going through the motions. But inside, I was a storm. I could feel it, ready to explode. Every minute I waited, every second I didn't act made me more furious. I wasn't just going to let this go, not without a fight. The hardest part was not breaking down, not losing control. I kept telling myself, this is just the beginning. She thought she could lie, cheat, and walk away. She thought she could destroy what we had and get away with it. She was wrong. I was going to make her regret every lie, every secret, every betrayal. And the plan was already falling into place. I had everything I needed, the knowledge, the patience, the anger. All I had to do now was wait for the right moment. When I was ready, I'd make my move. And when I did, there would be no turning back. She'd see what it meant to mess with a man who had nothing left to lose. I looked at her empty apartment, the silence still heavy around me. I knew she'd come back, she had to. But when she did, I'd be ready. Ready to make her pay for what she'd done. And that's when I realized, revenge isn't just about hurting someone. It's about making them feel the chaos they've caused magnified. And she was about to get a front row seat to that. A couple of days passed and I kept my cool on the surface, but inside I was feral. Every minute I wasn't planning, I was imagining what I'd do when the time came. I had the information, the pieces of my puzzle, and a clear picture of how I was going to execute my revenge. I didn't want to just hurt her. I wanted her to feel everything I'd felt multiplied. Jake's trip to the city was the key. I knew they'd be meeting, probably in a hotel, maybe somewhere else. I had to make sure I was there, waiting in the shadows, ready to strike. I'd gotten hold of his hotel info through a contact, and I knew the schedule. That night, I parked my car near the hotel, shaded by darkness, just out of sight. My heart was hammering in my chest, palms sweaty, stomach twisting with anticipation. I watched the entrance, inhaling sharply every time a car pulled up. I felt like I was waiting for an execution, except the victim was the liar who destroyed my trust. When Jake finally arrived, I recognized him instantly. Tall, broad-shouldered, with that smug look that made my blood simmer. He was laughing into his phone, probably telling someone how slick he was. I kept my distance, watching everything unfold. Just as I'd expected, he went into the hotel alone. I followed at a safe distance, my mind racing through the plan. It was simple, but effective. I was going to slip something into his room, something that would make him uncomfortable enough to think twice. Nothing illegal, just enough to shake his confidence. Inside his room, I found a moment when he was alone. I slipped a small recording device under the bed, hidden behind the nightstand. I wanted to catch any future conversations, any plans, anything that could be used against him. I didn't trust him for a second. While I was in there, I took a quick photo of the room, just enough proof that I'd been there, that I was watching. I didn't want him to forget I was already in his space. I felt a rush of adrenaline knowing that I'd already set the trap in motion. My job wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about making sure he knew I was always a step ahead. Next, I slipped a little note under his door, just a simple message. "You're not as clever as you think. Watch your back." Nothing threatening, but enough to make him wonder if he was being watched. That was the point. I wanted him paranoid, second-guessing his every move. As I got back in my car, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and cold fury. I was doing exactly what I wanted, sending the message loud and clear that I was in control, that I knew everything, that no matter how much he thought he was just doing his job, he was about to pay. My mind kept circling back to her, though, to Sarah. She was somewhere out there, probably still crying, maybe regretting her choices. I didn't feel any guilt anymore. Just a burning desire to see her realize she was nothing more than a pawn in this game. That's what revenge was for me now, making her regret her betrayal, making her understand that she'd lost everything she cared about. I could feel the weight of what I'd done, but I also felt lighter, like I'd reclaimed some part of myself I thought I'd lost. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without consequences. And Jake, he'd be next. The night ended with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in days. The plan was in motion, and I knew I'd made him nervous. Now all that was left was waiting for his reaction. I had played my hand carefully. I had set the trap, and I was ready to see it snap shut. The best part, I knew she'd be blindsided when she found out what I'd done. She'd always thought her lies had protected her, but I had taken that away piece by piece. And I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. Over the next few days, I kept my distance from her, silent, calculating. Every moment I wasn't actively planning, I was imagining her reaction when she finally learned I was onto her. I didn't want to rush anything, but I also knew I couldn't wait forever. The pieces were in place, and I was just waiting for the right moment to strike. Meanwhile, I kept a close eye on Jake's social media updates. No new photos, no mention of the hotel or the city trip yet. I knew he was probably sweating bullets, wondering if I'd done something or if I was watching him. Good. That's exactly what I wanted. Paranoia was the best weapon I had right now. One night, I finally received the first indication that my plan was working. I was sitting in my apartment, scrolling through my messages to Jake. Wife, I'd sent her a carefully crafted email exposing everything I knew about Jake's affair and his lies. I told her how he'd been cheating on her, how he'd lied to her face, just enough to make her suspicious but not enough to give her concrete proof. Then I checked my phone. There it was, the reply I'd been waiting for. A tearful, trembling message from Jake's wife, saying she'd seen some strange messages on his phone and was starting to suspect. She promised to look into it, to confront him soon. It was perfect. My stomach clenched with satisfaction. I had gotten to her just as I wanted. She was starting to piece things together, and Jake was feeling the heat. I kept my contact anonymous, so he wouldn't know who sent the message, but I knew he'd be worried. Good. That's exactly what I was aiming for. The next step was to make sure Jake's trust in his own security was shattered. I went back into his hotel room the following night, just to check if he'd taken any measures after my note and recording device. Sure enough, I found a new lock on the door, a suspicious new security camera in the corner. I chuckled to myself. He was paranoid now, which was exactly what I wanted. I slipped another note, this time on the window ledge where he'd see it when he checked the room. "You're not as clever as you think. Watch your back." It felt good to see him sweating. I could imagine his mind racing, trying to figure out who was watching him, who knew what. All this while, I kept myself rooted in reality. I knew I couldn't just blow everything up all at once. I needed to control the narrative, keep him guessing. I wanted Jake to feel trapped, cornered, vulnerable. That's when the real power shift would happen. One evening, I decided to escalate further. I set up a hidden camera outside his hotel room, pointed directly at his door. I wanted to catch him in the act, if he made any moves, if he interacted with someone, or if he tried to cover his tracks. The idea of watching him from afar, powerless but all-seeing, made my chest swell with satisfaction. All this time, I kept a close eye on Sarah, too. She was still distant, cold, but I could see the flicker of regret in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. The truth was, I wanted her to see that I wasn't just some cuckolded husband. I was the man who could shatter her entire world with a single move. And I was about to do just that. The night I watched Jake's camera feed, I saw him step out of his hotel room with a woman. A quick, hurried meeting in the hallway. I didn't recognize her, but I didn't need to. I knew it was another affair, another lie. That was enough. I took a screenshot, saved it as more proof. That's when I knew I had him cornered. The best part. I had already prepared a document, a detailed report with all the evidence I'd collected, messages, photos, recordings, the video clips from my hidden camera. I printed it out, ready to hand it over to his wife, to finally blow the lid off his lies. Now, I just had to wait for the perfect moment. I planned to meet her in person, give her everything, and watch her face crumble when she realized everything she'd believed in was a lie. I wanted her to see Jake for what he really was, an unfaithful, selfish liar. And as I sat back, reviewing my carefully laid out plan, I felt a sense of calm. I had taken control, and I knew she'd never see this coming. The revenge was in motion, and soon she'd be forced to face the consequences of her betrayal. The game was almost over. All I needed now was to deliver the final blow. The day finally arrived when I knew I could end this. I had everything lined up, the evidence, the plan, the moment. I'd spent days orchestrating every detail, and now it was time to make her see what her lies had cost her. Sarah had been distant, probably sensing that I was onto her, but I kept my cool. Inside, I was a ticking bomb, ready to go off. I met her at a quiet cafe, far from the chaos of our apartment. I wanted her to see me in control, calm but deadly. As she sat across from me, her eyes darted around nervously, her hands trembling slightly. She looked different, more fragile than I remembered. I could see the regret in her eyes, but I didn't care. This was her reckoning. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder containing all the evidence I'd accumulated, screenshots, recordings, the hotel footage. I laid everything on the table between us. Her eyes widened as she looked at the photos of her with Jake, the messages where she'd confessed everything, the video clips I'd captured. "You lied to me," I said straightforwardly, voice steady. "You betrayed me with Jake right under my nose. All those nights, all those promises, none of it was real, was it?" Her face crumpled. Tears welled up again, but I felt no pity. I'd made her feel what she'd made me feel times 10. I pushed the folder closer. "This is everything, your secret, your lies. I wanted to give you one last chance to come clean, but you already did that when you thought I'd never find out, so here it is." Her trembling hands reached for the folder, but I stopped her. "Look at it, read it, see the proof, see how much I knew all along." She looked down, speechless, tears streaming down her face. I saw the moment her facade cracked. She realized I wasn't just some naive husband. She'd pushed me so far I'd become something else entirely, someone who could destroy her entire world with a few simple truths. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered hoarsely, voice breaking. "I was stupid, I was weak, I didn't mean for this to go so far." I shook my head slowly. "It doesn't matter what you meant, you betrayed me, you lied repeatedly, and now you're going to pay for it." I reached into my bag, pulling out a set of keys wrapped in a small paper bag. Her eyes widened again, this time with confusion, then dread. "What's that?" "These are your things," I said, voice cold. "Your apartment keys, your car keys, everything. You're leaving today. I want you out of my life. And I want you to remember this moment because I won't forget, and I sure as hell won't forgive." Her hands shook as she took the keys, her face pale as death. "Please don't do this. We can fix it. We can go to counseling." "Stop," I snapped. "There's nothing to fix. You made your choice. You chose Jake over me, over everything we had. I don't want to hear your apologies. Just go, get out of my sight." She stood, trembling, and looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered one last time, then turned and left without another word. I watched her walk out of that cafe, that small piece of my life finally severed. When she disappeared around the corner, I let out a slow breath. My hands still trembled, but I felt a strange sense of relief. It was over. I had done what I needed to do. She was gone, and I was free from her lies. I looked down at the folder, the evidence I'd collected, proof of her betrayal, her lies, her stupidity. I knew this would hurt her more than anything else. That's what revenge truly is, making someone feel the pain they caused you, magnified, unescapable. As I got into my car, I made a silent vow. No more lies, no more betrayal. I'd rebuild myself from this wreckage. But I'd also remind myself of one thing. Sometimes the only way to heal is to cut the poison out completely. Revenge isn't about destruction for its own sake. It's about reclaiming your dignity. And I'd just taken mine. Back piece by piece, lie by lie. And that was the end of it.